morning and welcome back to our lecture series. We are discussing tragedy and comic absurdity in novel in the context of Gustave Flaubert's novel Madame Bovary. So, we have talked about Emma's character. Emma, that is the central figure in this novel around which all the happenings go on. In fact, she is entering into new ventures, and that's how the novel progresses, or rather the novel does not progress, because those ventures lead her to nowhere. We have talked about the non-story, we have talked about the non-calendrical temporality, where we do not even look at the space where the space that Emma inhabits. It is more of a journey on the inner. I was talking about how the nature has, by the time Flaubert writes, the nature has become a bland, insipid kind of a presence. The nature is a continuation of the ennui, the boredom that represents the marital relationship between Charles Bovary and Emma Bovary, right? So, we have had an extended discussion regarding the unconventional character that Emma posits. So, Flaubert deploys ironic romantic descriptions in order to establish a tension between various characters in this novel, Madame Bovary, their experiences of events and the real aspects of life. So, here life is and things are happening, but Flaubert is more interested, rather than the happening on the outer, Flaubert would be more interested in how these happenings, how these series of events are perceived by the different characters. So, there is this kind of, each character lends to a given incident their own lens. So, they are looking at the same incident through their own lens. So, for Rodolphe's letter, something that stands for a love letter, for Emma, something that stands for a love letter for Emma, which is meant to express, amour, love for Emma, stands for platonic affection. When Charles Bovary is reading it, he has no hint of the kind of relationship that Rodolphe and his own wife share. So, the same thing can be looked at in different ways depending on the position of the character, where the character comes from. So, by combining ironic romanticism with literal realistic narration, Flaubert captures his characters and their struggles more fully, in a more well-rounded fashion than a strictly literal or a full-fledged romantic style would allow. So, he is kind of bringing in both the things, an ironic romanticism along with the realistic descriptions to the minute details to the so we have vivid word pictures that paint vividly about a given setting, about a given scene. The novel follows the French classical concept of literature, where there is a harmonious structuration, and the narrative begins, we see, with some form of some degree of expectation and energy, whereas it ends in dissipation. So, nothing forms, nothing holds for too long. In Madame Bovary, time functions in the form of reminiscing past through memories, through dreaming, and the act of the state of being wistful. So Emma's forever pensive, wistful mood as a getaway from the real social affairs. So I was talking about being bored of whatever is happening around, especially if it is a provincial setting where Emma, lives. Her immediate surroundings do not arouse any interest in her. So she is trying to recourse in or find interest, identify with the books that she read, and in turn, emulate the aristocratic ladies in those books. So the journey is a psychic journey. She is, psychically detached from her surroundings in a certain sense, right? So the being saturated about one's immediate cosmos, being uninterested, dispassionate about the mundane affairs going on around Emma. So protagonist Emma Bovary's first scene itself, the first time the novel introduces her, we see her looking outside of the window, and this signifies her wish to outgrow her frame, any limited frame, any provincial, parochial frame cannot limit her mental scape. Her mental scape outgrows the landscape where she physically inhabits, and that's what is symbolized when she's looking out of the window. So mentally she wants to explore beyond the horizon, beyond whatever can be seen around her through the window. Illusion plays a major motif in the novel. There is this burning desire of pursuing and acquiring something, but even before the object of desire concretizes, it is over. So we see that there is this transience, this fleeting, roving nature of things, and this roving, fleeting essence is very well captured through a recurrent image of the melting snow. It's a very beautiful imagery where the snow is there at one point, and the next time you see it has melted. The snow is changing its state, so is Emma, right? Inwardly. In the eye of Charles Bovary, she is the housewife, a very domesticated kind of a woman. He has no clue about the inner world of Emma, right? So the landscape is also without any color. Like I said, it's a bland land. It's not a green habitation, a green nature that we have around Emma's house. And so the images are evanescent. They appear for a moment and then they are gone. You cannot capture them. They represent the ideal life that Emma is seeking, that she is trying to capture. So there is some ecstasy at one point, and the next moment it is gone. And it's a mirage of that ecstasy. The love that Emma is forever in search of cannot be grasped enough, right? So we see that the images transform even before the protagonist or the characters realize they are like a chimera, right? The sameness, the stiffness of nature that is lifeless, without any character, without any life, almost no vibes, and this nature scattered, lying over a vast span, echo the dreamscape, the mind of Emma, right, which is ever expanding, trying to outgrow, and the introspective state of Emma and her preoccupied self which is constantly in a state of trance. Um, Now we have some very effective as a realist. Flaubert is very successful. His descriptions are talking about the immediate material reality, but it goes on to become something more than description of the reality itself. It describes the entire setting, the emotion that the novel carries, the emotion, so the nature and the character, the protagonist psyche are in tandem. He is trying to say more through these descriptions, and this is something we have already examined through the description of Charles Bovary. The first time we meet Charles in his classroom and his awkwardness, which will never go away for the rest of the novel. Throughout the novel, he is carrying this, cumbersome, awkward, uncouth kind of a bearing, right? It never goes away. He's a shy lad, and that's how he remains even as a grown-up man. So, through the description of certain scenes, let me read out a part. I quote: "A warm wind blew in her face. The melting snow fell drop by drop from the buds to the grass." So once again, the melting snow, the imagery of the melting snow. And so the contrast of warm and hot, it's very sensuous. We can see it's sensory, it is sensuous, and we find a lot of onomatopoeic words, onomatopoeia referring to, describing almost through sound, through appealing to one's sense. We have onomatopoeic words that set up the larger picture. It talks about the emotions of the characters too. It speaks to the human psyche. So images are beautiful, but they're amorphous, they are fleeting, and they are constantly changing. The description of the glimmering snow, the melting snow that keeps coming back, which refers, how anything, any possibility of making, of doing, of construing a meaning is undone. It is unmade even before it concretizes, it reaches some sort of final form. There is a miscarriage, there is a disappointment that dominates. That dominates as the final tone or the main the mainstay of the novel. So the outer and the inner, like I said, the geographical and the psychic shifts are in tandem. While the Bovary couple leave Tostes, there are silhouettes of images, there are horses, figures at horizon that are not defined. And this silhouette, this outline without much details, it resonates with the emptiness, the hollowness of their self, their thoughts, and the meaning of their existence, or maybe the lack thereof. So are they taking anything stable and permanent with them from those days? In terms of memories, in terms of relations and identity, the desire for any kind of permanence and perpetuity is constantly flouted, right? This is also a characteristic of the novel as a form, as a genre, where the entire genre is about experimentation, where we do not have any formulaic, manner of writing, of laying down the novel. Novel does not abide by certain pre-given traits. It's constantly revising all the traits of earlier genres, earlier novels, and that's how it grows, in interaction with earlier traditions and yet in defiance of those traditions. We see that characteristic directly in this novel, right? Even so things happening, very simple, mundane things happening uh, on the outer, like the statue of the priest, you know, breaks, dismantles at one point. Uh, the priest statue made up of Paris dismantles, it breaks at a point, which refers to the breakdown of the marital contract between Emma and Charles. So, the title of the novel is about this married woman, and therein lies the irony. The woman that is supposed to be designated by her husband's name. So, that's also a commentary on how we identify women, traditionally speaking. So, Madame is like we most of us know, mademoiselle is referred in the French tradition. Mademoiselle is referred to the unmarried woman, whereas Madame refers to the married woman. Now, in Madame Bovary, Bovary being her husband's surname, Emma is Emma kind of is shrouded. She disappears, and the entire narrative is about trying to find herself, find her, assert her desire, as opposed to this domesticated persona that she's supposed to be, that she is socially acceptable as. So the society accepts her as Madame Bovary. She wants to become something more or less than that name. So the entire plot is about this female protagonist who is struggling and chasing the desirous self through romantic overtures, encounters with a series of men. And the novel defies linearity through recurrence of happenings. There is a circularity in the, if we may use a word like progress, in the progress of the novel. Both Charles Bovary's wives die. So, Charles was married before, also his wife had died, and after the death of each wife, Charles goes back and he touches their things, the things that belong to them. And in another instance, we see Emma and her paramour Leon, a young man that she gets hooked to. They are in a cab, and it's a very sensuous, scene where the car goes round and round Paris. It's not reaching any destination. They want to indulge in their erotic excesses within the car, inside the car, and it depicts the pressure that is getting released, right? So the pressure that that forms out of social expectations, or the normative image that Emma has to wear around all the time, everything is getting released, and the veneer is kind of gone inside the car when she's with Leon. So this circularity where a cab is not reaching anywhere, and it carries the kind of emotional, sensuous, sensual, erotic excesses. Is this narrative progressing to anywhere? It would make the reader ask. Or is it dealing with large chunks of events that harp a few themes, some overarching themes that keep coming back, where lone incidents in their right are not very important, but what is being said through these incidents, or the pattern that is being limned, that is being portrayed through these incidents, become more significant. Each venture of Emma with a paramour is a chunk of incident which doesn't take her anywhere. It is not like a story that is moving ahead in time. We see these, chunks heaped block after block, one on top of the other. It is not making any progress in the traditional sense of the term we understand. And in fact, if there is any movement, it is a spiral sort of a movement. I read in Emma's journey, where she is moving towards, she is heading for an abysmal pit where she will head on crash, right? So she is heading for an abysmal pit where she is going to head on crash in the end. As readers, we can anticipate that. So from domesticity to cab, in both places, both in her home where she is the normative self, and in the cab where she is the unconventional, socially unacceptable self, mistress of an unknown man, of an outsider. Both spaces have shifting suggestions, and Emma's sexuality cannot be contained either by the space of home or inside the cab. Her excesses, as opposed to her husband's inertness, passiveness, unresponsiveness, form the torque or the incentive to the novel's plot. That is what takes the novel forward, or to the next level, if we may. Like Charles's classroom, Emma's experience of visiting a waltz begins with some coordinated movements, some aesthetic dance forms, and so there is some anticipation aroused inside the reader that the next thing that happens is going to be beautiful, something that has a concrete meaning. But after a while, even the waltz gets corrupted, it gets disjointed, it doesn't hold, it falls apart. So every time the physical delight, the ecstasy, the jouissance is being constituted, is being gathered, it is miscarried after a point. It cannot be maintained. And so circularity and flouting of a linear journey is also present in Emma, going back to ruin every time, ruin that had witnessed her as a maiden, as an unmarried woman, and where she spent her school life, and then later she goes there as an adulteress, right? As a married woman who is betraying, who is kind of who cannot keep to the contracts of a marriage, and thereby ruin almost witnesses every stage of Emma's life, her transformation through these various stages. And that's where we also find a circular pattern coming in, right? Now the images, the imageries of fiction and dreams follow the pattern of real life. Emma reads the tragic story of Mademoiselle de la Vallée, which evokes the image of cracked glass. When she is reading the tales of Mademoiselle Vallée, she imagines cracked glass, which obscures any kind of optical sense, clear optical sense and clarity. So in her dreams also, we see there is no escape. I mean, her dreams are not ways of escaping the illusion and the ennui, the boredom that pervades in the reality around her, but they further trap her within these same feelings of illusion, of ennui, right? The dreams are cacophonous with the raving sound of carriage. So sound images, sound words, sound feelings, onomatopoeia recur throughout the novel. The image of a swan which goes on to become a dying swan, and the long dark corridor that Emma dreams about. It is typical, it suggests a typical cyclic progression, a cyclic progression comprising the process of waiting, confusion, and finally a fiasco, a disappointment and a miscarriage of all Emma's feelings, which lead to a nothingness, a void. So, Flaubert's chronotope, the chronotope, the time space where Flaubert sits and writes, cannot contain enough the ambience of traditional tragedy, so that tragedy is replaced by tragicomic sense, right, which is characterized by a dismal, incongruous feeling. So, a ludicrousness, a comedy emerging from a sense of, absurdity, a sense of not being out of place. So, comedy can also engender from the fact that a person does not subscribe to the values of her immediate surroundings, does not really try to consciously violate them, but kind of her expectations do not match with the predominant sentiments that pervade around her, that dominate the society, the contemporary society. So, tragicomedy that exists at the interface of the self and the society, not really a conscious direct conflict or trying to tamper social rules and prescriptions, but a kind of haze where the society cannot understand the individual and vice versa. The interface is not very fruitful, right, and it leads to incongruity, a kind of fragmentation. So, there is we see in Flaubert's Madame Bovary, there is this weeping tone, a very silent weeping tone throughout the narrative that resonates with the larger nature around, the unreciprocating, lifeless kind of nature, and it gets shriller and it's all over, it's scattered all over the narrative by the time the reader reaches the end. Like the sense of the classroom, like the scene of the classroom and the walls, the marriage of the Bovary couple is also steeped in some tragicomic moments. There is a comic vagueness and even to some extent the desire to make the marriage picturesque, which is a timeless desire, goes on to make it look more vulgar in some sense, where the invitees in the marriage we see, when we look at the feast and the marriage party of the Bovary couple, the invitees want to look stylish, but they end up looking grotesque. So, at the end of all desires, what awaits is grotesqueness, right. The carnival-like situation described as a procession that broke out, where there is no discipline, where there is a desire for some form, some meaning, but which is that meaning constantly slips away, slips out of hand. So, procession, which is supposed to be, disciplined, it becomes chaotic, right. And people loiter around aimlessly, which refers to a deep-seated sense of lethargy. Even the feast is so supersaturating, so fulsome. It's almost people start feeling nauseous, and it becomes repulsive after a while. There are too many things, too much of dressing and food around. The feeling of being sober is gone. It is almost, it makes one giddy, the way things proceed, giddy and nauseous. There is no, human control over anything, over any such incident which is supposed to work out in a and present itself in a grand fashion. The grand goes on to become ugly. The arrangement for the marriage party and marriage feast becomes, like I said, grotesque, fulsome and nauseous. Nothing forms. So marriage is shown as a kind of contrivance, a kind of endeavor of an artist for an ostensible order, right? An order that we are and meaning that we are constantly looking for in our society, definitive, meanings, telos, something that would lead to something else, a causality. And this falls apart entirely into disorder, into chaos, and meaning is annulled. So it starts with a lot of promises, a lot of anticipations and expectations, but end with vulgarity. The narrative carries a close intimacy between laughter, cruelty and tragedy. The letter written by Rodolphe, for example, to Emma, Rodolphe being one of her paramour, is at the same time cruel, tragic, and yet amidst this cruelty and tragedy, one also discovers some amount of comic absurdity to it. The relationship between Rodolphe and Emma, I have already discussed in our earlier class how it is full of lies. So Rodolphe's cruelty makes love, the concept of love, the idea of some elevated idea of love itself absurd, and there is still a hint of poignancy attached to this episode. The dead block lies in the reader not knowing how to react, whether this is a poignant sin or it is a fiasco one should laugh at, or it's a lot of cruelty being meted out to a woman who is unprepared for the reality. So Emma is an embodiment of desire throughout the novel, and she is first introduced against a backdrop of fire, which says a lot about her character, and the scenes, the way she behaves while Charles looks on. They are almost they are redolent with a lot of sensoriness. Emma drinking water or liquor, and very vividly Flaubert describes, illuminates how she drinks from the cup or from the glass as Charles looks on. Then at a point she pierces a finger with a needle, and then she's sucking the blood that comes out of the finger. Her eye color changing from brown to black and then to blue shows a sign of camouflage and shift, and afterwards the blue eye color also goes on to symbolize a poison that she consumes to suicide. I would like to read some parts of the sensuous descriptions of Emma, which tells us more about Flaubert's mastery, the masterpiece that Madame Bovary, the novel, is, and which also elaborates more about Emma's character. We don't have to describe her. All we have to do is read the way Flaubert has portrayed her. As she sewed, she pricked her fingers, which she then put to her mouth to suck them. Charles was surprised at the whiteness of her nails. They were shiny, delicate at the tips, more polished than the ivory of Dieppe, and almond shaped. Yet her hand was not beautiful. perhaps not white enough and a little hard at the knuckles. Besides, it was too long with no soft inflections in the outlines. Her real beauty was in her eyes. Although brown, they seemed black because of the lashes, and her look came at you frankly with a candid boldness. In another part, he says, the daylight that came in by the chimney made velvet of the soot at the back of the fireplace and touched with blue the cold cinders. Between the window and the hearth, Emma was sewing. She wore no fichu. He could see small drops of perspiration on her bare shoulders. Unquote. So this is the level of minute details which adds up very successfully, which add up very successfully to the character that Emma is and the possibilities in her, what she is going to become in the course of the narrative. She is a very sensuous woman, no doubt. Now, Emma's fragile but hard hands, her energetic quality, her candor, her to some extent her masculinity, the hardness about her, as very strikingly opposed to the bovine or the placid nature that Charles represents, posit her with respect to Flaubert's own thoughts. So we could see that through this woman, this intractable woman to some extent, this woman that does not give in to social mores, we have Flaubert's own image, Flaubert's thoughts in her, and her unconventional attractiveness could be very well seen as Flaubert's alter ego. A lot of critics actually say that Madame Bovary is Flaubert's alter ego, where he is constantly trying to outgrow his immediate surroundings. Romantic literatures are based on time past, and Emma recourses to Romanticism to seek a vision of ideal relation, as is found in Goethe, for example. So, Emma's romantic sentiments lead her to reverie and injudicious gestures, such that she is doomed in the end. By the time the reality of her, situation dawns on her, and she wakes up to the crisis quite late, the crisis that are grounded on a hardcore reality. The novel as a genre stands on a historico-political premise, providing its legitimacy within the conditions of the contemporary spirit. So, Flaubert shows the friction that is taking place when that takes place when excess romantic zeal cannot come to terms with one's immediate material facts, the doom that is going to follow thereby. Through the romance characters that she finds in her texts, in the books she read, Emma explores for the ideal man and locates herself in a milieu where she would love to belong. Her journey in seeking a romantic partner is also an introspective journey in search of her inner self, a self that is unknown to her. It leads her from the mundane captivity of the present physical reality to a more heterogeneous and meaningless reality, and it also paves the path to self-recognition. Through exploring the different dimensions of herself, she is recognizing herself, she is discovering the possibilities of herself, an aspect of her that was hitherto concealed from her. So, the union of Charles and Emma through marriage is surely a disappointment, while Charles, who is a medical officer, is symbolic of mediocrity through and through in his profession, in terms of his temperament. Emma aspires for a life in Paris, but she has to settle for something surrogate, a surrogate experience in a similar city. So, this is also novel between what life has to give, which is a flawed version, and what we expect out of life, right? We have to make do with some vicarious experience, a vicarious version of what we want from life, and that is for real. The friction between the ideal desires and real experiences is symptomatic of the novel as a genre. Now we have the presence of this apothecary called Homais, who starts writing and who prefigures the uprising bourgeois. His dialogue with the priest Monsieur Binet, who is a clergyman, shows the antagonistic crossing between theocentric ideas and science, both of which are rising in Flaubert's immediate society, and they kind of cross path. How interestingly they cross path. Homais is a blind force that stands at each turn of Emma's affairs, and without having any idea of what's going on in Emma's life really, he suggests her a way without any deeper understanding, like I said. So he is like a blind force, standing at each turn, each vital turn of Emma's life, and he is making a suggestion without having any knowledge of how that suggestion speaks to Emma's reality. So Flaubert uses a manipulative language for Homais. He uses a lot of jargon where different voices merge, that of the philosopher, the man of religion, as well as a scientist. Then we have the figure of Leroux, and so these figures represent the spirit of the age. It would be very wrong to say that Madame Bovary is completely a breakaway from the spirit of the age. The figure of Leroux is that of a moneylender, and it forebodes the society that is to come. It is inspired by the social happenings around Flaubert. He is a polished, calculative, complex person, and he makes obscene gestures to Emma, and he is a very shady character because no one knows what his earlier profession was. Right now he is in the story plot, he is a moneylender, but no one knows about his past. He has a corrosive effect, and he is further luring Emma to her nadir, to her downfall, and he acts as a hidden force that is eating away, that is gnawing at the base of a society. He, as a moneylender, he acts as a catalyst in putting Emma into perpetual debt and impelling her to suicide in the end. So I would very quickly talk about, I will also talk about the scene of the agricultural fair that has polyphonic discourses merging, where different layers of voices mingle, coupled with the orgy of animals. Once again, the confusion, the chaos prevail. There is a vain oratory factor where once again language fails. These are the themes that keep coming back in Madame Bovary. Where we see, so we see Rodolphe and the politicians speaking at different levels without comprehending what the other speaks. So finance, commerce, agriculture, all these topics are brought together. What emerges is a vague or a no communication, the lack of communication. So too many things are going on in the fair. No one can hear one another properly, and the effect of cacophony is very repulsive in nature. And there is a cloy feeling, there is this cloyness, this dissipate feeling that defines the feast in this fair. I quote from the book: "The feast was long, noisy, ill-served. The guests were so crowded that they could hardly move their elbows, and the narrow planks used for forms almost broke down under their weight. They ate hugely. Each one stuffed himself on his own account. Sweat stood on every brow, and a whitish steam, like the vapor of a stream on an autumn morning, floated above the table between the hanging lamps." Unquote. And description of hands are also, recurrent in Flaubert's writing. Emma's strong hands, the haggard labor woman's long suffering, exhausted hands recur. So the imagery of the hand, which goes back to the question of class and the means of production. It also, the labor for writing that Flaubert is undertaking in order to produce this masterpiece also comes in. So he's going back to the means of production, and that's from there the novel is churning out. I would quickly like to read a portion from the book where the labor woman Catherine Leroux's hands are being, her entire being is, her presence is being discussed, being described. A woman, a peasant woman who was given a silver medal for 54 years of service at the farm. I quote, "There came forward on the platform a little old woman with timid bearing, who seemed to shrink within her poor clothes. On her feet she wore heavy wooden clogs, and from her hips hung a large blue apron. Her pale face, framed in a borderless cap, was more wrinkled than a withered russet apple. And from the sleeves of her red jacket looked out two large hands with knotty joints. The dust of barns, the potash of washing, the grease of wools had so encrusted, roughened, hardened these that they seemed dirty, although they had been rinsed in clear water. And by dint of long service, they remained half open, as if to bear humble witness for themselves for so much suffering endured. Something of monastic rigidity dignified her face. Nothing of sadness or of emotion weakened that pale look. In her constant living with animals, she had caught their dumbness and their calm. It was the first time that she found herself in the midst of so large a company, and inwardly scared by the flags, the drums, the gentlemen in frock coats, and the order of the councillor. She stood motionless, not knowing whether to advance or run away, nor why the crowd was pushing her and the jury were smiling at her. Thus stood before these radiant bourgeois this half century of servitude." Unquote. So once again, communication fails. We are trying to, felicitate a labor woman with a medal, a silver medal, and some money that is being given to her. And it's a very self-congratulatory, complacent gesture on the part of the bourgeois people, the prize givers. But she, once again, cannot construe the grandeur, the significance of this entire event, this felicitation. The gap between the giver and the taker is a commentary on the social gap, the economic gap. So this is Flaubert, a master as a realist writer. I would like to stop my discussion today here, and we are going to meet again with another round of discussions. Thank you.